Today we have Jack Ho.
I remember seeing the guys on the Parawing riding 5-foot boards and my mind was like blown. I was like, how do I do this? How can I ride a smaller board? What gets me most in the zone is probably when you tap into bumps that you can surf. You have a 30-minute long wave and you have like, I don't know, maybe 500 cutbacks in a run. Like, for me, what I look at the most is hand placement. Like, what are your hands and arms doing while you're foiling?
What kind of gear are you finding works well for the Parawing?
Just sitting on my table, but
Yeah, whip it out.
yeah, this is kind of what we're running.
You've been to Hood, France, to Maui for a little bit. I can't even remember. And then you went to New Jersey. How you're lining those things up?
I haven't announced it yet. This is, I guess, the first time I'm announcing it publicly. I'm making a movie with...
Hey, LabRat fan, I have a question for you. Based on you listening to this podcast, you are either learning how to parawing, you're thinking about getting into the sport, or you are already parawinging and interested in improving your skills and knowledge. So if that's you, I want to invite you to the LabRat Academy, an online parawinging course that will give you the right foundation to progress your parawinging into new heights. In this course, I will explain everything from the beginning, how the parawing works, choosing the right gear, safety, land drills, getting up on foil, staying upwind, stowing, and much, much more. The information in this course is layered and organized to make sure that you progress as fast as you can with everything you need in the one spot. I want to help you learn how to parawing in less than 30 days. And if you are already parawinging, I want to help you get the right foundation to continue to progress faster. I want to offer everyone who is listening to the podcast 10% discount on the course as a thank you for following on this crazy journey that parawing has been. And all you need to do is add LabRat10 when you're checking out and visit labratfoiler.com to subscribe. Now let's get to the interview. Welcome to the LabRat Foiler podcast. My name is Dan, and today we have Jack Ho. Oh my God, bro. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Stoked to be on the show and talk foils. Always a pleasure to hop on a podcast with notable people in the industry and chat. So thanks
Dude,
again.
Thanks for coming on. Like, I've been following you and everything you do on a foil around the world for a while now. And seeing you get stoked on the parawing for me was like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. If he's doing the parawing, there's something there. So we're definitely going to be talking about parawing. But before we get started on everything that we need to talk about, I always like to just ask the guests a little bit about their background. I know you have a very rich background in water sports, and I feel that kind of leads on to how you ride the parawing. So it's cool for me to know a little bit about your water sports background and how did you get started in the water?
Yeah, so I'm here. I'm back home after a couple months of traveling at my home in Waikiki, and this is the house I grew up in and started surfing out front. The beach is a 5-minute walk that way, and started surfing when I was 5 years old, longboarding in Waikiki, and developed this passion for surfing. And fast forward, age 13 or 14, got into the foil. I was longboarding every day after school at the time, but was already looking for something to, bring that spark back. And, the repetition of surfing every day kind of got to me. And once I started seeing other people start foiling, it was only inevitable that, I wanted to try. And I was able to get my hands on a super junk used setup. And it costed $500 at the local used surfboard shop.
Bargain.
And it was a made in China foil. There's no logos on it, nothing. And the board was a short board for someone who was probably 300 pounds. And so yeah, I started foiling, and the downwind came, and all these different aspects of the foiling sport kind of came to life throughout the years. And now we're here, 2025. The newest craze is the parawing for downwind foiling. And for me, I think what gets me the most excited is foiling or riding in places that I would never have been able to surf if it
Yeah.
wasn't for the foil.
Yeah. 100%. For me, like, it's so cool to see because you started proning first when you jumped into foiling just because of your surfing background.
Yeah, I mean, so where I live, there's wind, but it's not like Maui where the wind is
Mm,
cooking every day. So none of us who grew up together had a wind sports background. We
yeah.
didn't, none of us kited or, did anything like that. So the easiest way to foil was just paddle in on your stomach. And, our boards were 4.5 feet long, low aspect, really curved out surf foils. And we'd paddle into waves and just ride them as far as you can and then pump out. And, at the time it was just linking as many as you could. And then,
Yeah.
one day we caught a wave and we just started pumping down the coast and just going and riding these little bumps. And this had to have been maybe like 2020 by now. And
Yeah.
we'd make it half a mile or a mile and it would feel like the biggest success ever. But that was
Right.
the start of the downwind scene. It was just on our prone boards.
Mm.
At the time, still no SUP, no wing, and it was like only prone because that's what we knew and that's what we did. And that's kind of what evolutionized into this whole
That's so good.
industry now where we're at, which is amazing.
So from prone, you made the jump into downwinding, sup downwinding with the paddle, or was there anything in
Yeah,
between?
yeah. So from prone, I remember watching Kyle Annie Reichert, Jeffrey Spencer,
Yeah.
and his brother Finn, like all those original guys in 2018 doing the SUP. And I knew that was the goal to the longer run because
Mm.
if, where we live, if you fall on the 8 mile run, you're paddling a mile and a half back to shore and it takes an hour. I've done it before. Then once you get to shore after paddling an hour, you're on the side of the highway, like trying to hitch your ride back the way you're trying to go. And it's just like not a really feasible thing for
Not
most of
ideal.
us to kind of risk every day, just for
Yep.
a 30-minute ride. So I knew the sup was kind of the option that would allow me to open up those longer runs, but I didn't do any supping when I was a kid either. So I didn't know how to
Mm.
paddle. Like all of it was just self-taught. And my first sup was 5'6", 24 inches wide and 80 liters. And it
Yep.
was a straight box. And
That'll do.
yeah, I mean, like seeing the boards these days, it's crazy how accessible it is for people to get into the sport now because the boards now are 1 million times easier than
Yep.
what we were learning on. And, it was to the point where we didn't even want to tell other people to try to learn because it was so hard that, there was a pretty good chance they weren't going to get it. But
Yeah, it's
now with
sketchy.
the Dave Kalama inspired Barracuda boards, that being the original design,
Mm.
and shifting it an entire industry with long narrow boards, it makes it accessible for so many people to get out there now and learn the sport. And then now with the parawing, that's the next step up.
Yeah, where did you first see the parawing? Like, do you remember the first time you put your eyes on it and you're like, "Oh, what the hell is that?"
Yeah, the first time I saw the parawing was probably last summer in Hood River.
Mm.
I've been going to Hood River now for 5 years since high school, and every time you go, there's a new thing happening there. And
Yeah.
it's, they have this magical river with wind every day and swells, and it's the perfect place to develop ideas, to test gear easily. So every time you go, there's a new fad. And I remember last summer I saw Kyle Maligro with this trash bag looking kite thing. And this was before it was even called a parawing. This was before parawing was even a thing. It was literally this like kite thing that he held with like two lines and two handles and would kind of fly it like this and pump it to get up. And it looked like an awful design, but it was allowing him to ride the smaller board in the
Mhm.
river while all of us were still on the 6 or 7 foot long SUP boards. And I remember seeing that, having no interest just because it looked so difficult. And then this past summer in Hood River, I went in May, and I go every May when there's a strong gust of wind or a
Mm.
2 or 3 day window of wind. And I remember seeing the guys on the parawing riding 5 foot boards, and my mind was like blown. I was like, okay, how do I do this? How can I ride a smaller board? And how can I, switch that feeling of getting off the SCP to a 5 foot
Yeah.
prone style board. And I got to borrow one, and it took me a few days of struggling in at the hatchery to kind of get it. I never flew a kite before. I never really winged, and all of this
Mm.
was new. And took me 2 days, kind of figured it out, and then I was able to get going at the hatchery. And very rough way of doing it, getting up, fumbling it a few
Yeah.
times and barely getting it under your arms, and then stashing it. And once it was stashed away, I knew I wasn't going to fall, or
Yeah. You
I
know
was
how to stay
confident
up.
enough
Yeah.
not to fall. Right. So that's really all I needed it for, was to get up.
Yeah. It's I want to touch on a few things you mentioned there, because I think it's always cool for us to double click on, like, going back to that first session that you had in the water with the parawing, probably in 30, 40 knots, whatever it was blowing at the hatch. Like, what was the hardest thing for you to understand about the parawing at those early days when you had no instruction of how to even pop this thing up in the air? Like, starting from scratch, where did you go?
So I think my disadvantage is I was on a 5'2"
Mm.
47-liter
Oh,
prone board that was like, it it stayed on the top, but like not completely, but it was too big to fully sink.
how
So
much do
I'd
you
be
weigh,
like,
Jack?
I'm 155 to
Yeah,
160.
it's still super
Um,
small.
yeah, and I'm on the lighter side, or in that kind of mid range, but still, it was just like really hard to sink. And I would do this like squatting jet ski toe up
Mm.
position, kind of on the surface of the water. And then while I was flying the kite, and the hardest part was not doing any wind sports growing up. So
Yeah.
the kite lines were getting tangled, and it was like freaking me out. That was just like another stress thing. And then my legs were getting super tired from squatting in that position for,
Mm.
20, 30 minutes waiting for the perfect opportunity to get up. And then once I was up, I had no problem flying it. But then the next kind of thing that I had to learn was the stash. And
Yeah.
I mean, even now my stash is terrible, but it works for me. And what I learned is that everyone has a different method of stashing the parawing.
100%. Yeah.
And for me, I don't want to use it again once I'm up. Once I'm up, I want to put it away and not touch it the entire run.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter how I stash it. I can get it tangled, and I know that it's just going to sit there.
Mm. Do
And if
you
if I do fall, then I can take it out and untangle it and get it up. But it's not the most seamless transition.
Yeah, like, you take your time with it, and then it's probably a good time for you to have a pause in the run anyway, because you fell because, what, you hit a fish, like, in New Jersey or something, and then
Yeah,
you're just like,
exactly.
I'm
Like,
just, yeah, I'll take my time with this.
yeah, we were in New Jersey last week, and there's so many fish. You hit something, or maybe you're doing a turn, you fall or breach, whatever it is, and like, when you do fall, you're not in a rush to get back. You probably get on your board, you take a breath, take it out, and kind of like look around, see where you are, admire the view,
Yeah.
then you keep going. Yeah.
It's so cool what you said there, because a lot of people getting into the sport now, I think everyone has super high expectations of, like, their progression in a new sport. But I think it's really important for people to reflect in their experience with other foiling disciplines that can help them in the parawing. Like you said, you were with a 40-liter board, but you had the board balance to stay kneeled on that board for like 10 minutes if you wanted to, because you tow. So you know how to get up on the board that way. Probably like proning, you have the pump, you know how to glide, you did downwinding, so you can stay on foil. Like, what were the things that you think you brought from all the disciplines that you already did that kind of made parawing, that much easier because you had those skills?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just growing up on the surfboard, for one, is like the first step of just having that comfort on a board and in the ocean since I was a kid. And then, with the downwind stuff, we were used to riding our prone boards, and the only option is not to fall, or else you're paddling.
Mm.
So we learned how to, downwind 10 plus miles without falling. And maybe you're not doing radical turns the whole way, but you're like efficiently foiling and not, coming off. So I took that just for the stash. You have to be able to stay up for at least a minute while you put it
Mm-hmm.
away.
Yeah.
And that's a minute of only half concentration. Half the time you're riding by feel, and you're just feeling the bumps, trusting the water while you're looking down, putting it in your thing. But you can feel the next swell setting up, or
Mhm.
you've done it so many times, you know exactly where to go. And
Yeah,
then
it's huge.
the get up comes from the jet ski. Yeah, like when you toe up on the ski, you're on a prone board, you sink it, you kind of squat and bring your knees to your chest, let that board just sit right below your feet, and then you wait for the jet ski to move. And in a way, the parawing is a lot like a wind powered jet ski. It's just that toe to get up. So when you're using the parawing on a smaller board, that jet ski toe up feel is exactly what you're gonna find with using a parawing on your prone.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I think it's always worth touching on that so people can kind of just recalibrate their brains when they're getting into the sport. And if they're like, well, I've only winged in my life. So there's going to be a lot for you to learn. Like you'll need to learn how to read swell.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
like it's going to
definitely.
be a massive progression. What's a good tip for people who are in that kind of position? I think there's a lot of people coming in from winging, with a winging background, and they have maybe the skills to balance on a big board, with a pendulum in their hand. But they want to start downwinding. What's a good way for them to start doing that with the para?
Yeah, I mean, you take downwinding for example. That's already the hardest aspect of foiling, and it takes a lot of people over a year to really understand. And, it took us multiple years to go from the prone to the sup. So it's this transition
Mm.
of kind of letting your ego down and accepting the humble pie that's going to get served. And I mean, just like with anything, if you want it badly enough, you're going to put the time in to do it. And I think the number one tip of advice is to go into it knowing that it's not going to be easy, that it's going to
Mm.
require some time, because I think a lot of times the problem is people think they're good surfers, or they're maybe a good foiler in their mind, or they're competent in one part of foiling and they want to do another part of it so badly.
Mm.
But it's not a 100% direct translation from aspect to aspect. Just like if I went wing foiling, I probably would take a few tries to get up, and once I'm up, not feel entirely comfortable doing it. And that's
Mhm.
just because I don't do it that often, right? So I think if you want anything badly enough, you're going to put that time, you're going to put the energy into it. And, there's pretty much a 99% success rate in doing it, because, the thousands of people who've started
Yeah.
foiling in the recent years are the proof that anyone can do it. In our local community here, a lot of the older guys who are crushing the downwind runs maybe haven't surfed in 10 to 15 years, or maybe
Mm.
haven't surfed in their lifetime and were former canoe paddlers, but now
Mhm.
they're picking up the foil and learning how to do it. So I think that just shows that you don't have to be good to learn how to do it, but you do have to put in that time, that energy, that effort into sacrificing, maybe some days where you're going to fall, but
Oh,
if
yeah.
you reach your goal, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, dude, I am. When you talk about that stuff, it brings me back to the days that I started with the SUP as well, and that journey to learn how to downwind. You get up on foil, your heart rate is at 200, and then you start. You're starting at
Mhm.
such a disadvantage of having that tunnel vision of very, high heart rate, and then you have to
Mhm.
learn how to connect bumps. And if I look back now, if I had the parawing, I'd be like, oh, screw this paddle, man. I'm gonna get the parawing, because with the kiting background, for me, it was pretty intuitive, and just do that. Like I get on a wave, I'm at 80 heart rate, like super
Mhm.
calm, and then I can actually do the thing that I want to do with a little bit of a better mind frame to it. So how do you compare the paddle to maybe starting on the parawing for downwinding these days?
Yeah, I mean, what you said was kind of like spot on with the kiting background and everything. And I think, for people listening, a big part of it depends on where you live, like geographically, where you're
Mhm.
located, what your local conditions are. Like, for example, in my community here, the South Shore Oahu downwind community, there's maybe a few guys who picked up the parawing, but I think the parawing doesn't really have a everyday use here, just because we get awesome swells and big open ocean energy, but it's not necessarily always windy. It
How
could
windy
be
is it? Like,
10 to 15 miles per
yeah.
hour, but the bumps could be more than enough to go downwind. So For us, the paddle is kind of the saving grace, where every day you can guarantee get up if you know
Yeah.
how to do a flat water start or start in small bumps, and you can go ride. But on the opposite end, like if you live in Hood River and it's windy every day, or if you live in a place where you have consistent wind, I mean, there's, hundreds of spots all over,
Hmm.
at least, America, and, if you don't count the rest of the world, where there's consistent wind every single day. And
Hmm.
if you have a spot like that, then the parawing is the no-brainer, because you're adapting to those conditions. You're using what makes the most sense to succeed. And if the parawing is a lot easier for, former kite surfers or windsurfers or people with wind sport experience, then that's the route you should go, just because that speeds up the learning curve so much. But let's
Yeah.
take a supper, for example. Let's say
Mm.
someone from Hawaii who is really good at sup surfing or has prior SUP flat water racing experience. I've seen people like that pick up the sup foil and learn within a few weeks, just because
Yeah.
they're coming from that much more of an advantage than everyone else.
Hmm. That's cool. Yeah, I would definitely like for whoever's trying to get into parawinging, like just do a list of whatever you think you have an advantage and like leverage that. If it is, getting up and surf in like prone, I've seen, James Casey now, he's like proning pop up and then he launches the parawing
Hmm.
while he's pumping out. Because he
Yeah.
also has light winds. He's in 15 knots and getting up in 50 knots in the parawing is a slog, man. It sucks.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, look, I think that's a valid point, and I want to get into a little bit of technique as well because, like, I'm a huge fan of your writing. Just
Thank you.
style wise, intensity, and just the breadth of your dynamic as well. You're not just doing like super hard turns all the time. You have a flow, like it feels like you're really taking advantage of what you're seeing in front of you and just using that as much as you can. What do you feel brings the best out of you when you're out there on a downwind run? What mind frame or what do you have to be feeling to be like, yes, I'm at one with what I'm seeing right now?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Dan, for saying that. I appreciate that, and I think for me, there's multiple personalities of downwinding. You can either go on a small board with the parawing and maybe a surfy foil and go do carves, or you can be in open ocean with drawn out swells on a SUP board,
Mm,
just trying to go fast. But I think for me, what captivates me the most about downwinding is the freedom of expression in like this endless area. If you're
yeah.
surfing, you have maybe 30 seconds on a really good wave to do as many turns as you can. And, that's granted, that's a different type of riding. The downwinding is almost the most freest form of riding, just because you
Hmm.
have the entire ocean. And, when you're riding and you look 50 to 100 yards that way, you're there in a few seconds and you're riding those waves. And I joke, like, the downwinding is basically surf foiling, but there's 100 waves right in front of
Hmm.
you,
It's like a skate
and
park, yeah.
yeah. And so I think for me, what gets me most in the zone is probably when you tap into bumps that you can surf,
Mm,
because my whole reason for downwinding is to just increase that feeling of surfing for 10 miles or 30 minutes, however long that is. I mean, if you went up to any surfer and asked them if they want to surf a right hand point break for half an hour straight, I mean, you'd be silly to say no. So I think, if your answer is yes to that, then the downwind is the closest thing you can get to an
yeah.
unrealistic 30-minute long wave. And so yeah, I guess where I find the most flow is when you're really tapping into the energy, and one swell is lining up after the other, and there's no pumping in between. I mean,
Mm,
for me, a seamless run looks like connecting your carves to where you're carving into the next bump and using the speed and momentum from that turn as a pump to get you into the one in front.
yeah.
And then once you're locked into that one, carving back the other way, drawing another S,
Mm,
and just continuing that for as long as you can. And when I'm absolutely locked in on a, maybe it's a head high swell or something that feels big, or maybe there's a stretch of water that looks like it's about to stack up
Mm,
really well. All I think about is being on a powder mountain snowboarding, because for
yeah.
me, that's the closest feeling. And then, the second thought is surfing that point break. So all these like other activities that I love to do, that snowboarding, surfing perfect waves, they all come into mind while riding downwind. And I think my style and the maneuvers I want to do are inspired by all these different sports.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's awesome. When I think of you, I think of you with a couple of lenses. Like I definitely see a lot of surf, and I definitely see a lot of downwinding. Um, just the things that I feel like you like to do. If you were to choose the perfect or like the most fun conditions to get out there on a foil, what would you be doing, and what would you be like? What would you be riding?
Oh,
Downwind,
it's yeah,
prone, or
it's
what?
probably Hood River, Rufus, or Arlington, somewhere out east.
God, Rufus is
I went,
just unreal.
yeah, it's unreal, and I've been going there for 5 years now, and every time it gets more amazing and more amazing, and I think for me, just the fact that I have to get on the airplane, travel to go there, it
Mm,
creates this adventure narrative in my mind that we're going on some fabulous surf trip, but we're
yeah.
like 8 hours from the nearest ocean. And I think the bizarre factor of striking a little river, if you told that to a surfer, they'd laugh, but if you told that to a foiler, they'd ask to come
Mm,
and join you.
100%.
So I think this like kind of narrative of it feels like you're going on to some secret surf trip or secret surf mission. That's kind of what makes it super exciting for me. But also, I mean, the river itself and the swells are just the most perfect thing ever for foiling. I mean, it's like that river was created for the foil one day. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, everyone does it on different crafts, whether it's a canoe, a SUP, stockboard, a prone paddleboard, a kite board, whatever it is. But you can't argue that, the foil is the best tool
Oh,
for that river. And you're
it's unreal.
literally surfing slash snowboarding slash like bowl skateboarding for 45 minutes on this perfect downwind run. And yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
wish they
I
went
just
for
have,
longer. Like
yeah,
I
I
just
have,
wanted like a
yeah,
20-mile. Like you just needed more.
yeah. I have so many good things to say about that place. And, but yeah, I guess the perfect setup would just be like a surf wing, something that turns really nice and
Mm,
has some glide, and the parawing, of course. I mean, to ride your prone board or ride a smaller board than you're used to is the ultimate on that river, just because it feels like you're hoverboarding. The sup is already so amazing there, and once you chop that board length in half and ride something super small, it's mind blowing.
yeah, I resonate with that. When I went there in July, and I got a good couple good Rufus days, and there were moments that I was just in that river looking like I was close to the wall, and it just stacks up so well in that section of the river, and it was glassy, huge,
Yeah.
slow, and
Fuck, how
super like
good. Yeah.
packed. And it's like when you said escape bowl, that's what it feels like when you're going down and you look up and you have like these little wedges that you jump into. You're just jumping into this another bowl, and it's the funnest thing ever, man.
Yeah, and I think another thing is too is like, your brain recognizes patterns, and when
Mm.
that pattern is solved in your brain, you get this fill of dopamine, right? And so there's this cognitive thing that's happening is these perfect swells are kind of lining up. And if you downwind, or if whoever is listening has experienced this before, you know what it's like to see it set up and then see it scoop out and then break again. And when your brain sees that and recognizes the pattern over and over again, it's a constant dopamine hit every time,
Yeah.
on top of the actual riding itself. And like, I've never seen anything like it, where you come out after you do the run and there's 15 guys giggling standing there, like,
It's crazy.
you don't really know how to contain yourself if it's really good. You come out, you're hearing screams, oh my gosh, that was freaking firing, and like, you're never going to hear that in a surf lineup, right? You're never going
Mm.
to see 15 guys at the same time coming in from a session together, high-fiving, equally stoked. Usually one guy got the good wave and everyone else maybe had a bad session. So I think there's this very unique kind
Mm.
of aspect of this place. And there's no sharks. If you
Freshwater.
if you
Beautiful.
got into some sort of accident where you got cut or you got hurt, you paddle 5 minutes to the side of the river and you're safe.
Yeah.
So it's like everything about it is just, it's safe, it's fun, it's like the easiest place in the world to do a
Mm.
downwinder. And it just makes all these things make it so great. And that's by far, in my opinion, the funnest and most best place to go
That's
foiling.
awesome. I went for the first time this year, and it's gonna be hard not to like try to go back every year.
Oh,
And I was
totally.
watching, I was watching that one clip that you have pinned to your profile that Rufus was just stacked like straight off the bridge. It was already massive, and I'm like, oh god. And I just went through that clip and just like watching you ride and how you transition from rail to rail, and I was like, when I think about my riding, I think I'm better just going front side and, sharper turns that way. My backside turn when I'm going back, I feel like I do a longer arch. It's never as tight. What's what do you do with like foot placement and just like body position to just really drive those turns and stay on that pocket as much as you can? Because that's super important for going to that next level of downwinding where you're actually turning and having fun.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, I watch a lot of snowboarding. I'm a big snowboard fan, but not that good at it myself. So I feel like when I'm on the mountain snowboarding, I can't do what I want to do, even
Yeah.
though I know in my head exactly what that looks like. And then when I see the clips of me, I'm like, oh man, like I'm just not naturally good at this. So I think when I do those turns on the foil, that's kind of in my mind, my way of feeling like I'm competent and in that snowboarding space. So I take a lot of snowboard inspiration. And, for me, what I look at the most is hand placement. Like,
Hmm.
what are your hands and arms doing while you're foiling? Because, the person who's maybe doing the most radical turn, but their arms are in the air, fit flailing, and, form wise, that doesn't look as good as someone who's maybe doing smaller turns or turns that aren't as big, but they're composed and calm the whole time. Their
Hmm.
arms are either down or next to them or formed out. And so I think that's one thing is like, making sure that your whole body is working as one to stay calm and composed through your carve. And then, when just like surfing, you know, if you give a 50% bottom turn, you're only going to get a 50% top turn.
Hmm.
And, the great thing with the foil is that it's way more forgiving than the surfboard. But, there is something to be said about when you get to a bump that's super stacked up. And if you do want to try to rip this section of river or bay or water, wherever you are, um, utilizing to go straight down the bump, do a bottom turn. So you're coming up on the face, just like a normal surf turn. And then when you go back into that carve, you're going to have so much more power and
Mm.
energy and utilizing the whole bump. There's the wall of it, the trough of it, the crest of it. And, when you start your turn going in at the top of the bump, drawing it throughout the bottom of the trough all the way back up onto the next bank. And in a place like Hood River, there's so many peaks everywhere that, if you mess up that turn right in front of you, you just fall out the back and you're in the next peak. So you have all these options of where to kind of ping pong to. And
Hmm.
really you just got to pick the one that makes the most sense to either move forward or get you to the next bump. And
Hmm.
a lot of times it's not always going forward. A lot of times it's falling back or going to the side or
Yeah.
using a smaller bump to get to the next bump. And for me, the number one thing is not pumping. If I can like go a minute or two with just carving and not pumping to the next bump, then in my mind, that's like a good section that I flowed through.
Yeah. And it's super hard to do. Like I think I saw a little while back a couple of the boys posting like the no pump challenge and just doing like a section with, and really focusing on that. And it's hard. Like sometimes you just like, I gotta eke a little bit to get there.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And with I think the cool thing about the parawing is that it allows you to explore that without having, that thing in the back of your mind that you need to paddle up. Like if you do 10 paddle ups in a session because you're falling and stuff, you're going to get exhausted. You're going to get tired, especially in the beginning and then you're like, oh, I'm going to ride at 80% because I don't want to fall. I hate that feeling. Like you need to fall. You need to fall and push. Otherwise you're not going to go anywhere.
And also, when you have that parawing as a kind of backup crutch to like have security that you're not going to be stuck out there and you can just get up again, it's almost like the downwind surfing is your opportunity to practice foiling. You
100%.
have a 30-minute long wave that goes for 8 to 10 miles. Let's say we're talking about Rufus or some of the other Hood River spots out east. And you have like, I don't know, maybe 500 cutbacks in a run. Like me and my friends have thought about it. Like let's say you're doing one turn every 5 to 10 seconds, or let's say one turn every 5 seconds, how long is that in a hour-long run? And you can do the math, but like you're doing hundreds of cutbacks over and over again. And like maybe on camera, if you're watching as a viewer, it gets a little repetitive, but like that feeling stays the same every time. Every time you do a turn, it's that ultimate feeling of just hoverboard, frictionless gliding above the surface of the ocean, which is mind-blowing to me, 7 years later still. And especially if you're trying to practice something, like whether it's arm placement or form, or you get so many reps doing that over and over and over again, where even in the ocean on a surf foil session, you still got to catch the wave, then you got to pump out, then you got to make sure no one's in your way. But the downwind is just over and over and over. And
I think that's why it's so addictive, and I feel everyone's like, oh, but you have to shuttle, but all of that stuff.
That's the best part. Shuttle's sick.
If you have a good crew, it is like you need to find people you want to hang out with. It's fine.
I know, definitely. I mean, I think the downwinding is a special thing on the foil, and it's different than downwinding on the canoe or a stand-up paddle. It's like literally endless surfing, and the closest thing I've done is splitboarding, but like you still have to walk up the mountain 2+ hours at least to get to the top, and then maybe you get a 5-minute run down with only 1 minute being in the most critical section of that face. So then you kind of hit your ride out, or you hit the lower section of the mountain that you're on. And then you have to walk up the mountain again 2 hours, where the foil is like, for the reward, there's so little effort. And, you drive 10 minutes up, 10 to 30 minutes up, and then you get a 10-mile stretch back. And then after you're done with, 30 to 45 to maybe an hour of riding, you come in, you hang out with the crew that you went with, talk about how good it was.
We'll debrief.
And then you get back in the car, eat some snacks, and you go again. So it's like you're using that shuttle time to get the socializing in. And then after you socialize with all your friends, you get to go ride. And it's just like the most perfect form of like pleasure reward combo with the amount of effort you put into it. And yeah, a good day of foiling downwind is hard to match.
Yeah. I going back to that topic of turns and stuff, I want to talk a little bit about gear, because I know you ride maybe like a 600 kind of square centimeter foil, kind of roughly. I'm normally on an 800, and I started exploring with just shorter fuses, just because it definitely helps with turning, but also just the speed you gain from them going downwind is incredible. And I've been riding now the Code A10X, that surf foil, and I was just blown away at how much faster you actually go with it compared to a high aspect foil, which kind of blew my mind. And you do need to understand how it works. But what kind of gear are you finding works well for the Parawing, and what are you riding out there?
Yeah, so I feel like the whole point of riding the Parawing or using a Parawing is to ride a smaller board, because if the board didn't matter, everyone would just stay on the SUP and there wouldn't be that progression of going down to a smaller craft. And with the smaller board, your whole kind of objective is to start turning and feeling that different sensation of carving a small board downwind. So I think for me, my foils have changed a lot in the past few years. Like when I first got into downwinding, it was all about the high aspect gear and trying to go as fast as you can and with the least amount of drag and just point and shoot. But
Yep.
my opinion, that gets boring. It's like going straight on a wave. Like, yeah, it's
Mm.
fun maybe if you're in huge stuff and you're just going fast, but like for the most part, if it's just an average day or, average conditions and you're just going straight, that longer board makes it a little harder to turn. And, the high aspect foil kind of just tracks in a straight line. So
Yeah.
I think this year after going to Hood River, I just basically rode more surf inspired wings. I mean, right here, it's just sitting on my table, but this is my go-to downwind wing right now, and it's a 800 Eagle X with the tips chopped
Nice.
off. I
What's
had
the
my
aspect ratio of that one, Jack?
I don't know.
Roughly?
Well, 12 it says. It says
Yeah.
12,
Still
but
high
I mean,
aspect. Yeah.
yeah,
Super high.
it's pretty like, a few years ago when this came out, this was the most high aspect
Mm.
kind of design that we've seen yet with F1. And then now with the momentum that takes the place. But I mean, if you look at it from here, there's still like a pretty solid
Yeah.
amount of cord. And so this wing I've foiled Maui to Molokai, Molokai to Oahu, and
Mhm.
Maui to Lanai on this foil, this exact one. And with the curved tips and all, and basically the idea was to take your high aspect downwind wing and just chop it so it turns better.
How
And
much did you take off?
about an inch.
An
Yeah.
inch. Yeah.
So I think, imagine an extra
On each
inch
side. Yeah.
to here. And but you take off an inch, you round it out, and all of a sudden now you have this like downwind surf machine that
Mm.
pumps just as good. I mean, yeah, maybe there's like 2% difference in the tips being off with the efficiency, but like as long as I can stay up on foil and not work that hard, that's all I want. And
Yeah.
then also it's not the fastest wing, so it's the perfect speed to just stay in the swell. And like, you don't want a super fast wing to go do turns downwind, because what you're looking for is that support with when you draw out a turn, naturally you're
Mm.
losing speed, you're losing glide, but you still just want that support from the foil to just keep that low end lift going. And generally foils that go really fast don't have good low end. And I think for downwind surfing, it's all about the low end, because you want to
Yeah.
be able to just stay on foil. You want that support through the turn. And you also don't want to go that fast, because then you're outrunning the section. It's important that you match the speed of the bumps you're riding. So for Hood
Mhm.
River, for example, I would take a skate wing or something that's a
Yeah.
lot slower to match that speed of the bump. Where in Hawaii, like for example, crossing the channels, this foil, even with it chopped like this, was plenty enough speed for me to keep up with the swells.
Yeah.
And then you also got to keep in mind that like we were doing this 5 years ago on the shittiest wings ever
Mm.
that were so slow and, so bad. So anything now that's available in the market is already the best foil ever a few years ago. So if you
Yeah.
adjust your perspective in that way, then really you can make anything work.
Yeah, true. In terms of board and are you just on like a mid length, or are you still on that 40-liter sinker most of the time?
Yeah, I have it right here. Luckily I'm in my boardroom and would love to show you, but
Yeah, whip it out.
there's it's a mess over here, but yeah, this is kind of what we're running, and this is just it's a surfboard shape,
Yep.
pointy nose, and let's see, what does it say? 5'2", 17". So
By how many liters?
47 liters,
47. Geez,
47,
that's small,
and
man.
this is the exact board that I learned how to parawing on.
Yeah.
And it feels like a surfboard. It fits under my arm just like a surfboard. And when you're up and riding, it does have this incredibly surfy feel to it. That narrowness, being able to roll easy, and then
Mm.
the small compact length. I mean, if I'm going to Hood River tomorrow, this is what I'm taking with,
Yeah.
let's say, a 3-meter wing just for safety and the guarantee pop up.
Yeah.
And then
Is that a production board?
Yep, that's a production board. And
Yeah.
most of the gear these days whether it's production or custom. It's all so good that it's, you
Mm,
know, anyone can just buy a foil now and go ride. Back in the day, it was really important to make sure you had all the best stuff because the sport was so hard and the
yeah.
foils were efficient, and you wanted to make sure that, every little bit counted. Where now I feel like all the foils are, really good quality and pretty efficient that you can make anything work.
Yeah. If you buy something new these days from any brand, it'll be pretty good.
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah, the
Yeah.
gear's insane, and you never would have thought that the gear would have gotten to this level when we first
Mm.
started.
The other thing I wanted to touch on with you is because of your surfing background, I feel there's like a big unexplored area in parawinging that people are starting to push now, which is powered up wave riding with the parawing. Like you see Cash do like, clearing sections on the wing and that kind of stuff. And you see, Malo doing insane things as well. And do you feel like that's something that you would get into having the flying the parawing while you're on a wave, or you like your instinct is just to put it away?
To be honest, I don't think I'm at the level right now where I could successfully do that.
Hmm.
I'm ideally, yes. I mean, it looks pretty insane to be riding a windy spot and you like tow yourself into a big bomb that you wouldn't
Mm,
be able to, you know, human powered get into it. But I think for me, the flying and the stashing is still a little bit uncomfortable in a non-perfect downwind situation
yep.
that I wouldn't be able to, feel comfortable riding a huge wave with the lines and everything.
Yeah.
But the videos that I seen of it, it's definitely another option for accessing, you know, outer reefs or windy waves. And the ultimate, I mean, a jet ski's cool. I went tow foiling this morning with my jet ski, but like the ultimate is human powered
Mm,
expedition. And human powered, sports is kind of the ultimate of, the entire extreme sports world. So I feel like when you get yourself into a really big wave or a really gnarly downwind situation, whatever it is, without a motor or a jet
yeah.
ski, it's all impressive. So credit to those guys who are towing into big waves with the parawing and using it on the wave to
Mm.
their advantage. But I think, yeah, truthfully, right now I'm just not nowhere near that level to try.
And
And
it's
I
also,
think
I think, what
it's dangerous too with
it
the
is dangerous.
the
It's worth
lines.
saying
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
like, I think it would be smart to, if you're doing an open ocean downwind run, to carry a knife with you just in case you have to
Hmm.
cut your lines, like, or if, let's say, you were to get tangled, very unlikely situation, but still a possibility. It's just there's all these things that can happen with the lines that I'm not ready to deal with yet that I
Yeah.
think would get in the way. But
Yeah. Look, and we always like to talk a little bit about that stuff because I think you can get yourself in a shitty situation with the parawing very, very easily if you're like a beginner into downwinder, like in downwinding. So
Mhm.
if you like, you just shoot yourself 3 kilometers off the coast and you've never done that before, like for you to get to that on a sup, it takes you a while to build up to that, right? So you
Mhm.
have the experience to then be out there. But if in the second session you're like, yep, I'm doing a downwinder and I'm, off the
Yeah,
coast for a long, and like those things are great, kite knives and all that stuff. But I think people don't feel like they don't use the gear. So when it comes to an extreme moment that you need to use it, you don't even know where it is. Like if you have a kite
hmm
knife, I think you need to actually bring it out every other session. Literally, just get it out of the pocket and put it back in
hmm
because you need to know where to go. If you're in a wave and you're tumbling on the wave and you know you need to cut it, you're not going to be able to do that if you haven't
totally,
even
yeah,
touched that thing. Um,
totally. But yeah, I mean, just like anything, I think there's unsafe moments in whatever aspect of the ocean you're dealing with, but yeah, I mean, I think with just more practice and a little bit more repetition on the parawing, ideally I just get more comfortable with it. But like, even someone like myself with years of foil experience, I'm still struggling with the parawing. And just like any aspect of the sport of foiling, it's like all it is repetition and doing it more often. Every
yeah.
time I do it and every time I, use it to go downwind, I feel a little bit more confident, or I learn a little bit more about how to deal with the bar, or how to fly the thing
Hmm.
better. And so yeah, I think going back to that advice for people listening who want to get into it, it's all repetition, and putting in that effort for something that you really want, and practicing.
Yeah, it's key, man. And what you're saying, I think, has to do a lot with your spot. Like, if you're doing a downwind run, you're gonna fly the parawing for maybe 5 minutes of your session. If you're doing laps and that's all you're doing in the same spot, you're flying that parawing for like,
And that's,
50% of your session.
totally. And that session is maybe equivalent to 10 downwind sessions if you're catching 10 waves, So yeah, I think another great thing to point out, like for people learning, is like, don't put it away as soon as you get up, ride with it, and
Yep.
maybe practice stashing the line and then throwing it up again, get some more speed and practice stashing the line again, because you want to
Hmm.
be able to be able to execute that when it's time, when the conditions are good and all the boys are going. You want to be able to know what you're doing to have fun with everyone else and keep up.
Yeah. And I think one of the best feelings in parawinging is a successful redeploy. When you get it out, like you pop it back
Yeah.
up and it goes flock, and you're like, oh God. Then that's when I feel I start to get in the flow of a session after that first little run.
Yeah.
Because I do a lot of laps. I live in a bay, and I just stop at a
Perfect. Yeah.
high performing spot, and I do, like, I don't know, a kilometer run, just go up
Mhm.
1 kilometer and then come down. And then when you redeploy and it pops up in your back going up to the spot, I'm like, okay, here we go,
And
and then I just
everything
do
just
that for
works
2 hours.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck, how good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that like I haven't really tapped into yet, is the upwind downwind. I mean, that's a
Mm,
totally unexplored thing for me, just because I'm like, I've done it a few times at the hatchery, but ideally on a super windy day, or not even a super windy day, but a consistent windy day
yeah.
where it's not, up and down, it's a consistent gust. I want to go out here, Diamond Head, and just, we have this section of tide against swell, and it gets just super stacked up
Mm,
blue water. And I want to be able to loop that, but I think, comes back to practicing, just getting comfortable with that throw out,
yeah.
redeploy, and then flying upwind, and, just handling the thing, more
Hmm.
time, more practice. And I'm looking forward to continuing that practice. And I just went to New Jersey last week and took the Parawing with me, and the wind was 50 knots, like
Man, that was
absolutely
epic.
smoking. Yeah, thanks. It was
It
a
was
fun one.
bombing. Like, the
But
footage was unreal.
yeah, the wind was so strong, smoke on the water. And I had the I had my prone board with me because I knew I wanted to ride the prone board, but
Yeah.
that's also all I had. So 'cause I was coming back from Europe, didn't have all my gear. I had this prone board and a 3.5-meter wing. And if
Mm,
anyone knows, a 3.5 and 50 mile per hour gust is
a
freaking
handful.
crazy. And but I was able to do it, and that alone just taught me so much of how to fly it better, and
Mm.
how to handle it better when it's super windy, or you need a little more power, less power. And then also, like, another thing that we haven't talked about yet, but the travel side of the parawing,
Oh, yeah.
it's so much easier than the sup. I mean, I take a 6 foot day bag that you put like a
Mm.
shortboard in,
Hmm.
just like for transportation. I just load
Perfect.
that with a one foil, a wetsuit, and the parawing, and it fits all right in there. And you're on the plane just carrying a little board bag, and you get to go on a foil trip
Dude,
without some sort of 8 foot thing with a paddle case and just all this crap.
it's the
Yeah.
perfect setup for you, man. Like, you're a world traveler, you go everywhere, and I love, like, what you're doing with that opportunity that you have to travel and, document those vlogs and stuff. Like, you've been to Hood, France. I think you went back to Maui for a little bit. I can't even remember. And then now you went to New Jersey. Tell us a little bit about, like, how you're lining those things up. What's like, you wake up and you're like, where am I going?
Yeah, yeah. So I think for me, just like anyone, the second you go on a fun surf trip, that bug
Yeah.
catches you, or you kind of get locked into that drug of dopamine and having fun. And hey, I mean, it's the most powerful drug in the world, of is just having fun. And I think once you kind of get addicted to that, you're always chasing the next opportunity to kind
Yep.
of get that hit again, in a sense. And like, and granted, it's a very healthy way to do it. But for me, like, I think for me, it's a lot more than just having fun. It's about the trek you have to take to
Mm.
get to that spot. And
Mhm.
I mean, a lot like it really goes back to my childhood of loving airplanes. I've
Right.
absolutely loved airplanes as a kid, and I had this like infatuation with Hawaiian Airlines planes and Honolulu Fire Department ladder trucks. I was like, one of the, every kid has their toy car, their whatever it is. For me, it was airplanes and fire trucks.
Yeah.
And my a weekend would be spent. Saturday morning would be spent at the airport runway, just like watching the planes take off. So I already had this like love for aviation that when I started traveling, just became super fun to be at the airport, being a passenger on an airplane. Um,
Mm.
so I kind of already liked that side of it. And then when you got to mix that with the surfing and doing what you love, it was just like this like complete thing of getting to go fly on airplanes and then go surfing. And I just started doing it, and I haven't stopped. And for anyone who's thinking of starting to travel more consistently to foil or surf, like, I'm sorry, but it's never gonna that need is never gonna go away. It's like
Yeah.
forever you're gonna be cursed with this trike mission sensation of just wanting it and wanting to have fun. But sorry, I just got so off topic there. But to
No,
answer your
dude,
question,
it just says because I think we all have our like our phases in life. I guess, I've had my downwinding phase that got me pumped to get out of the water. Like I need to learn this, but like if you get motivation from like searching online, what's pumping right now, where in the world can I go and explore something new, dude, ride with it. And you are like you're doing like you're living an amazing life, meeting new people everywhere, getting to experience conditions that very few people experience. Like the video from New Jersey, I'll link it up in the description so people could check it out. Like
oh, thank you.
it was awesome, dude. Like, the New York background, you're like fully suited up, it's freezing, and it was just fiery. Like, people don't get
Yeah,
to experience that. Like, people, I didn't even
yeah, I
know
was
that was a thing in
stoked.
New Jersey, dude.
Yeah, I mean, like those moments are what I think keeps me coming back because you know how it works is I have this mental map in my mind of the world
Mm,
and all these different spots that I've been to, and I kind of correlate them with the different seasons,
hmm.
whether it's summer, winter, spring, or fall. And based on those seasons, I kind of have an idea of these places that maybe are generally more consistent or get a lot of swell during those months, and or even places where there's just good weather and
Yeah.
good weather patterns. So I kind of have that map in my mind, and I think a lot of the travel depends on what the time of year is. And first off, I start off at home, like, is there waves at home this week and
Mm,
or this month or like in the near future, and are the conditions at home going to be good? Because that takes priority over everything else. Surfing good waves at home is the best. And then secondly, if there's no good waves at home and I see an opportunity to go travel to score waves, whether it's to make a cool YouTube video or to connect with an old friend who I haven't seen in a while who lives in
mm.
this place. Whatever it is, if there's a solid reason to do it, I'm gonna go and book a flight and pack up all my stuff and get my gear ready to go chase that adventure. And it just so happened that New Jersey one, I've been trying to, the local community of New Jersey Foil Club foilers who there's 10 of them, and
Amazing.
the 10 of them there have been telling me like, oh, there's this run and it gets really good, showing me photos. And so I've known about this run for the past year, and I've seen videos. And then I was coming back from Europe, and this is kind of like an example of always being ready to go and
Mm,
ready to act on something, because I was coming back from a month in Europe. I went to California for a few meetings. And after that was done, I was my work was done. I was ready to go home, and my buddy Ed Jinquit of the New Jersey Foil Club. If anyone wants to go foil there, he's the guy to hit up. And he told me it's going to be good. And I had the Parawing in my bag, and I didn't have that board behind me. I only had my prone board, and I didn't even have a thick enough wetsuit. Thankfully, I was able to get all these things before the day, and I, hopped on the red eye to New York, met my friend Kainoa there to film this whole thing, and we were able to bring it to life. And I think, it was because there was an opportunity that was given to me, and I took that opportunity. It would have been easy to just say, I'll catch you next time. Like, it's been a long month. I'm trying to go home. But, I saw some value in possibly getting a shot like that in a place that no one else has kind of documented it before. And the ultimate goal with it is to show that wherever you are in the world, wherever there's water or wind, there's an opportunity to foil. And I think my travels in the past year have really been focused around how can I maximize my fun. And if you're a surfer, and this goes into, I guess, the next topic, but if you're a surfer and you are counting on your Indo boat trip to give you your surf trip for the year, or you're counting on, maybe striking a swell somewhere, there's a lot of factors that have to add up to, make it a successful trip, and especially places like Indonesia, or a lot of these good surf destinations are so far away. But being able to adjust that mindset of using the gear you have, which is the foil or the Parawing, whatever it is, and understanding that you can go on a surf trip that's not a traditional surf trip, but like a Shrike Mission to New Jersey, that's still a surf trip, because you're surfing, you're having fun. And like ultimately, maybe you're even getting more enjoyment out of that as you would being in Indonesia with a crowded lineup full of good surfers. So adjusting that mindset of like, where can I go with the foil to get get that fix of riding waves is my main goal. And I'm trying to show that through the videos I post, those stuff I share, is that, you don't have to live in some perfect tropical destination to, surf or score. You can live anywhere. And as long as you have the right gear to utilize what's in your backyard, or what's, close to you or accessible to you, then you can go have a good time.
I love it, that man. It's I think one of the things that foiling taught me was just to have an open mind. I remember when, winging first came out, I was shitting on it. I'm like, oh, that sucks. And then I started doing it, and that's all I did for a year. So it taught me how to bite my tongue and just be just open-minded about opportunities. And I think that's what you have naturally in you. You're like, I'll do anything, man. I like, you have personal drive and a personal just like creativity that I really admire. So it's keep doing. Like, I love the videos, I love the vlog style. It's a different, I think it's hard to pull that off. Honestly, I don't think a lot of people can do that style of video, because you have to have a storyline. I had a video background before changing careers, and I know how hard it is to put a video together and make it like, okay, I want to hang on to this and watch it. And I watch your stuff all the time, and it's really good. Keep doing it.
Thanks.
It's sick, man.
Thanks so
sick.
much. That's the best compliment, and that I appreciate that. And I think really I just love doing it. I love that excitement of going somewhere that, maybe you don't know if it's going to be good or not, or if, it's this hunt, this chase. And then when you get the reward, like how we did in that video, excellent conditions, that's a cherry on top. And that kind of validates all the effort and work that you put into getting to that location to pull that off. And, and then when you get to document it and share it, to be able to watch it back and kind of relive that moment with your friends or whoever you did that with, that's a really special thing. And for me, I watch a lot of YouTube. Every night before bed, I watch YouTube, and I watch all my friends who post, who I subscribe to, and even the people I don't subscribe to. I watch a variety of different videos, whether it's surfing or foiling. And from all of those videos and the content that I consume, I kind of get this idea of how I want to tell my story through editing. And I take a little bit of inspiration from everyone's kind of channel, because everyone does it differently. Everyone who vlogs has a different style of linking the talking and surfing together, and whatever it is. but yeah, I'm pulling a lot of inspiration from just watching a lot of long form content. And so I think um going on to uh, my next thing that I'm excited about,
Hmm.
my buddy and I are releasing our first movie. We're aiming for February 26th,
Yeah.
and I haven't announced it yet. This is, I guess, the first time I'm announcing it publicly. But I'm making a movie with everything that happened in 2025, and all the cool places that we traveled to this year. I'm gonna put them together and try to tell this story about all the things that I found important to me this year, whether it's inside jokes with your friends or certain places or foods, cultures,
Mm.
whatever that I felt was important to me that kind of marked my 2025 20-year-old identity this year. I'm going to put that into this movie that we're starting to piece together. And so I think that's my next project, and something I'm super excited about. And I think this movie is going to show the narrative that I want to show is that a surf trip is everywhere. And
Mm.
like, this is what I'm doing in a way is my version of a modern free surf style of surf tripping.
Yeah,
And
sick.
so yeah, that's something I'm excited for, and I'm gonna hopefully just keep giving more updates as we make it, but we're still in the very early phase of editing. We filmed everything, but now we gotta piece it together, which is the hardest part.
It's the hardest part, man, but I think like you're a good storyteller. So when you look back at those things, like you'll take the nuggets out of whatever trip it was and that'll be a storyline. And I think one of the things that I find a lot of value in is when people document their experience and their learnings and whatever it is that they live through, be it a weekend, a year, whatever, and helps you in your life in whatever way. It could be inspirational, it could be technique, it could be just like your growth as a human, like there's so many things that we can learn from each other. So, man, I'll get the popcorn out for that one.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm excited, and I think for me, I'm excited to share something that's 100%, mine. This movie, there's no sponsor support behind it. Everything's
Hmm.
authentic. Everything is gonna be exactly how Kainoa being my friend who's hopped on the fun tour with me this year and traveled and filmed the whole year. But I think it's really a reflection of our young adult lives that we've just entered in this new phase of no longer being in high school and being teenagers and kind of making our own decisions as we age into our 20s. And I think
Oh,
it's
you're
going to
getting
be
old, Jack.
a
Aging into
yeah.
your 20s.
I think it's just like a cool thing to represent this era of my life, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited to make it. And hopefully one day we're old and gray, and we're looking back and can watch this video and be reminded of that awesome run we had
Dude,
when we
that's
were
sick.
younger.
I love having people that are driven around me in my sphere that I can just draw a little bit of drive for myself. There's time that you need to pick yourself up, and I like to like my feed when you're like looking at people you follow and stuff are just people that like I watch and I'm like, oh, see, that's the drive I need. Like
Mhm.
let's pick
Yeah.
me up again, and you're definitely in the top end of that, man. So yeah, it's gonna
Oh
be
well,
cool. I'll whenever that comes out, I'll link this back up in the description as well. It's going to be a retrospective thing, but if people watch this podcast a little
yeah,
bit
right
later,
on.
it'll be here. But in one of those videos, and I think I saw it a few times. I saw it in Hood. I saw it in I think the Jersey one, if I'm not mistaken. I saw an interesting accessory that you had on that I hadn't seen before for parawinging, and I experiment a lot. I have so many like prototypes of stuff that I get my wife to sew for me, poor thing. And
MVP right there.
oh, totally, man. I'm doing minimal
Thank your
viable products every
wives.
day.
Everyone.
And
That's like
I
the
re-
yeah.
I like that vest idea. Where did that come from? Like, is that something you just stitched together yourself, or is that what is that?
Yeah, so been fortunate enough this year to work with Patagonia closely to create any accessories that come to mind for better everyday use in the water, whether it's for surfing or foiling. And
Sick.
at Patagonia, they have this incredible team that basically creates by hand, and anything you want to happen can come true by just sending an email and having a cool idea, because
Mm.
they're incredibly creative people, and when you bring creativity to the table, everyone kind of feeds off that excitement to create new things. And that vest kind of came from this idea of I went to Hood River originally, learned the parawing, and then I just remember that the waist belt kind of being in the way a little bit, and
Mm.
I just I wasn't used to wearing a belt surfing ever,
Yeah.
so it was great. Don't get me, I like the waist belt, but I wanted another option where it was a little bit more just like nothing on your body.
Mm.
And I had this idea of the backstash, and I was on FaceTime one day with one of the designers, and I'm in my living room like pretending that I'm pumping, and my phone's on the wall. And I was like, yeah, I want to like put it behind here. Then like once I get it in there, like not touch it, and then just ride and like have this like thin material vest I can just take on and off. And a week later, this thing shows up at my door in
How
this
good.
box. They made this vest and took it to Hood River that week because there was a day of wind, and I was like, I really want to try this thing. Flew to Hood River to go try it for the first time. It worked out perfectly, and yeah, I was blown away by how well it worked out. And
Mm.
I think continuing to get those accessories and kind of experiment with what works the best is so exciting. But
Mhm.
like, I'm not closed-minded to just that. In New Jersey, I did one run with the backstash,
Mhm.
and I kept hitting fish and I kept falling, and I would have to take it out of my back and get it back up. And in that situation, it wasn't really the best, most efficient solution.
Yeah.
Where the waist belt came in way handier on the second run when I was able to have it right there. And if I
Mm.
fell, I would just pull it out and put it back up. So I think depending on the situation that you're in or the type of riding you want to do, having all these different accessories is important.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. I have like probably 3 or 4 different concepts I'm working on. One for downwinding, one for waves, another one just for laps. And I need different things in all of those situations for parawinging.
Mhm.
I want like a quick thing that I can get in and out of, or I want something that I'm going to put away. I'm not going to see it anymore. And
Absolutely.
I think having the backstash is cool. I think people might be a little bit put off by having to stow it behind you, but once you pack the parawing properly and you have it in your hand, putting it in your back and having like a turtle back is not really hard. You can just it's actually quite easy just to chuck
It's
it in
pretty, yeah,
there.
it's
You don't
really
have to spin
easy.
it around. Yeah.
And yeah,
So I like where you're
I
going with it.
never really, yeah, I never really found any hassle to that. And you know, just keep evolving, keep trying to one up what you did previously and try to make whatever that is better, whether it's your foiling, your design, your accessories, your whatever you're doing, as long as you continue to get better at it, that's growth, that's improvement. And I think for me, that's the number one thing that I chase. And
Dude, that's
fun.
awesome, man. It's I thought this chat was gonna go this way, because I've heard you, in the progression podcast. I've heard you before, and I was like, oh, I need to speak with this guy, man, because now he's into parawinging, and obviously that's all I do, like 90% of the time on the parawing these days. But dude, do you have anything else you want to share with us? This is your time. I think we spoke a lot about what's up next for you. I'm really stoked about this movie coming up, but what's your next strike mission, man? What you're eyeballing?
Yeah, so well, yeah, thanks so much again for having me on the show, Dan, and thanks to everyone for listening. Without anyone listening, there wouldn't be a show, so it's the viewers who make it. And I think next for me, we're heading into wintertime. A lot of keeping my eye on Japan for snowboard strike missions,
Mm.
something that I love to do recreationally. And then surfing at home, of course, the winter time on Oahu or in Hawaii is just so good. But as those seasons change, different places become good. I'm excited to also get some surfing and foiling in while I'm in Japan. Just
Yeah.
a cool different place during the winter time. And yeah, really the next few months is kind of this unknown, up in the air. I mean, I live my life week by week and try not to get too ahead of myself. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fun to be had, and I think to leave off everyone with one thing, it would be I think the most important thing in what I do is having fun and chasing that fun. And, if foiling brings that, if surfing brings it, whatever it is, just keep seeking that sense of enjoyment. And the second it's not fun, then stop doing it because it's not meant to be.
That's it, man. Well, take the Parawing in that snow trip. I saw a few people doing some cool things on a snowboard with the Parawing. If it's blowing, you never know
Yeah,
what could
no,
happen.
such an easy stash for travel
Yeah.
too. It's perfect. Right
But
on.
dude, yeah, like I think you need to know this as well. Like I think when you look at foilers, people who surf might have a reference, people who downwind might have a reference. But I think you became now a reference for people in any industry and in any discipline. Sorry, everybody that foils can look at your stuff, your content, and resonate with it because you do everything. You do everything really well, and I think your drive, your creativity, and your humbleness is unmatched. So keep
Oh,
doing what you're doing, bro. Really enjoy your stuff. I know you want to be a firefighter. You told me that when we
yeah,
were
that's
chatting
my
before.
yeah, one day if if surfing and if this life ever comes to a pause in a different way, or you know careers change, and I always thought firefighters were superheroes, and they still are, so one day maybe.
I think
But yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit further down the track, you have a lot of foiling to do, but I'm 42. I'm a firefighter and I'm a foiler. That's all I do.
Oh, no way.
And it's the best life ever. You have
Oh yeah.
time, you have a job that's purposeful, you're working with people that become brothers because you go through intense stuff every day.
Hmm.
And yeah, and then you get to just zone out and relax foiling because you do have a lot of time as a firefighter as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, not a bad one to
Well,
keep in the back pocket, man.
that's the life right there. And yeah, thanks again, Dan, for having me. And I guess to end it off, thank you to the people who support me. I mean, the friends, the family, the foiling communities, to someone on Instagram who watches my videos, to sponsors, whoever it is, there's this incredible amount of support and kindness and camaraderie within this foil community that's you don't find anywhere else in the world.
Mm,
You'll certainly not find it in surfing. And I think
mm,
to everyone who's a part of it, thanks for being a part of my life and allowing me to do what I do. So stoked to
awesome,
be on
man.
the show. Thanks, Dan, for having me. And until next time,